Hello and welcome to this launch event showcasing the fantastic updates and enhancements to Kubla Cubed 2024. So my name is Kate and I work in the business development team. I've been testing the software as a user and referring back to user feedback that we've had to review how the new updates have met your requirements. So we're really excited to be hosting this webinar today and to show you the new features and enhancements that we've made. Today we have 3 speakers from Kubla to demonstrate what is coming in the new release. So first of all, we have Rich Howes, who is the lead developer for Kubla, and he will be demonstrating the usability and site plan updates. Next, we will meet Ted Woods.
Hello, everyone.
Who is the managing director and product owner, and he will be going through terrain modeling and the measurements updates that we've made. And lastly, I will be demonstrating the imports and imports from PDF and CAD data and the export files and the updates that we've made on those. So there will be time after we have done our demonstrations to post any questions that you have throughout the session, and we'll try and answer those at the end. But do please add your questions to the Q&A while we are talking, and then it just makes it nicer at the end. We won't have any hanging around for those questions to come through. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand over to you, Rich.
Thanks, Kate. So we've basically added a lot of usability features. Some of these are going to be covered on this particular section of the presentation, but there are quite a few other bits spread throughout the rest of the presentation, many of them covered by Ted as well. So just going to focus on the undo redo, the availability to just if you've deleted something, then just get that data back, or if you just have changed your mind and you want to just get something back. Or to undo something if you just decided I don't need these extra points when you're editing a particular element. We've got changes to what's actually underneath the cursor. So as you're moving your mouse pointer around, actually getting that to be a bit more representational about what the data is, what the element is. We've got changes to what's underneath the element subheading, which is the element listing on the right hand side of the interface. And we've got some changes to the auto recovery. So I'm going to just demonstrate those things now. So when you see the interface, you can see it's pretty much the same as 2021, which is quite cool. There's lots of familiarity with that, but there's quite a lot of changes that we've added. So we've got the ability to undo now. So if we add a platform, I'm just going to paste it over here. We may press Ctrl-Z to undo one of our points and then put another point somewhere else. Okay, we can finish that one off and okay that one. And that will calculate, but we may then decide we want to delete. So we'll delete that one. And then we could press Ctrl-Z, which is what I've been pressing so far, to undo, or we could actually use the menu system here to undo it again. But I'm just going to continue on to the next section now. So we've got cursor. So cursor changes, so you can now see the element type underneath where your cursor is. So this is the paving type 1, and this is paving type 2. And then if we go around here, you can just see underneath it, you've got the features, the finished levels, which haven't been overridden by the relative data. You can change these settings though. So if you go to cursor, and you can just turn the element name off if you want. There's a few other minor things. For example, it was a bit unclear when it said C for cut, so we just made this a bit clearer about what the ground and the proposed sections are as well, and just basically just formatted the box a little bit clearer so you can see what's going on. Underneath these element headings, the actual element name, is actually just a little bit of data about it. So this is the same data as you'll find in here. So this is a paving type, so it has the depth, but under other elements you'll have this one here. So this is the finished levels, but it's a feature surface. So a feature surface can have lots and lots of different pieces of data underneath it. So it just gives a range of data. One of the things that we focus on in development is all of the developers are involved in support a little bit, so to make sure that we're exposed to user projects, seeing how people are using it. And what we often used to see was basically you'd have some kind of, there'd be an element name here, and then people would type and they'd add more descriptive information about what the range of elevations was. And of course, then if they change those elevations, they'd have to go back and change their title a bit or something like that. So this hopefully makes it a little bit easier for people to understand. We've also made changes to the auto recovery process. So if you go down to look on the left-hand side here, under File menu, we've got auto recovery. We've got now options for the interval, which were there before. I've got mine turned off, which isn't necessarily recommended, but just keep it simple for the demo. But then we've got recovery options, so you can select which project it is, and then a particular recovery file here. You can also, of course, delete things as well if you want to. If you've got a particularly high interval, sort of small interval between saves, then periodically the system will make sure that that doesn't build up too much on your hard drive. Okay, the second thing that we're going to cover is some changes to the 3D and the site plans part. So going back to here, we've got our 3D view. And you'll see now that you can actually see the actual site plan displayed in 3D. So this is a bit easier for example, if you've want to show it for client projects. So in this example, what I've done is just very quickly got some kind of satellite data and put it around the area, so to show basically what it would look before and then changes afterwards. We can also select different parts of the interface, and that will also highlight on the right hand side with our elevations which element that is. And if I right click on this same part, then it will deselect. If I right click anywhere else, it won't make any difference. That's only when I right click on the element itself will make a change. The same thing is in reverse. So if you click on the element itself, then you can see this is just basically the stuff that's underneath it. I click on this one, and then it highlights that one in 3D as well. We've got some changes for the visibility, so you can control. So if you don't like to see the site plan on this, you can just turn it all off or keep it on. And you can also change the layering, so which site plans appear on which parts of the project. So as you can see here, I've got this part a little bit lower, the actual terrain. I could move it up a bit, but then you won't be able to see anything. So that's why I've kept it down there. The way to read this particular menu system is a little bit different to a normal menu system. Basically, anything that's read above this proposed label is basically it appears on top of everything. Anything that's below the proposed but above the ground is, well, in between the two, and anything below the ground is basically only going to show on the surrounding space. So this doesn't show on the model at all for the original terrain, it just shows there. But as the unmodified terrain is also undisturbed like the rest of the surrounding area, it made sense to maybe put it here, but it's obviously depending on your own preference. So these are all changes that we hope will make it more satisfying for when you're demonstrating to your clients exactly how the site will change, and hopefully win you more contracts. Okay, I'm going to now pass you on to Ted, who's going to talk more about the terrain modeling and how we've split things up into absolute relative to make sure it's clear about the right workflow that you should follow. So thanks very much, and now here's Ted.
Okay, thanks, Rich. So I'm going to be talking about the terrain modeling. The main thing that we've changed in regard to the way that models are generated is we've added an option to the internal sidebatter, which I'll talk about. The other things we've done are more around the editing experience. So Rich has already talked about undo, redo, which makes a huge difference to editing your features and contours and break lines. But we've also added things like an elevation feature sort, the ability to enable, disable elements. We've improved the UI around offsets and added some shortcuts. And we've also grouped elements into absolute relatives in the stack. And we've done an extra visualization for element colors. And that's really useful for adjusting from finish levels to subgrade. Well, I'll just demonstrate those quickly. So probably the hardest one to demonstrate is the internal and external side batters. So in Kubla Cubed 2021, there was an option with side batters to be on or off. It was actually on was an external side batter and off was like a vertical. Now we have another option, an additional option, which is external, internal, and off. So external, when you defined your boundary, it was kind of, if it was a ground line, it would be pinned to the ground, but the other ones, extrapolate, varying levels, and fixed level, they'd be sort of floating and they'd be in space and they'd be joined to the ground externally, so going downwards, if you imagine, or outwards, if you imagine a building pad, you're defining the base of the pad and it goes downwards or upwards to daylight. In this case, you'd be just defining this lower area, but quite often you actually don't want that. What you would want is to define the area of disturbance and then say go inwards. So that would be true in a pond design scenario quite often, or excavation in a mining context, or land remediation. So I'll just demonstrate the difference. But basically in this platform, I've traced around the area where I want the limit of disturbance to be for the pond, and I want it to go inwards at a 1-in-1 side batter. Now in the old system, you would have this option external, so it'd go from the line I traced outwards. So you can see that's like going, and then I would have to try and adjust the inner line to kind of get the disturbance area to match the design, which was a lot of trial and error and messing around. So this is a lot easier to work with. So for those of you doing that kind of work, you'll find that really useful. So I'll just load another project for now to demonstrate the other items. So this is a kind of standard Kubla Cubed project with reductions for it's got an existing phase, a topsoil strip, and then it's got feature surface containing the finish levels and a reduce elements for adjusting from finish levels to the subgrade level. You'll notice the site plan showing in 3D, which is really useful in this one for understanding the project. The first thing we'll cover is the elevation feature sort. So when you sort elevations, or when you import elevations, or even when you take them off, you often end up with outliers. One's in a sort of much higher one than the others because you've either made a typo or there's some bad data in CAD. So what we have added is an option to sort. So if you click on this spanner and hammer button now, there's this sort option, and you can sort either outlines, contours, break lines, and points by either elevation or tag. Tag can be handy if you want to group them, if they have a tag that you want to group them. So clicking on sort there, it will sort. This one is the lowest, and then this one is the highest. So that's just a real usability enhancement there. Another thing we've done, which I'll demonstrate on the bulk earthworks tab, is we've added an option to turn off elements, which can be really handy for troubleshooting any problems, and also comparing two different options. If you want to try one set of contours and see how that looks, and then another set, you can have them both in the same phase, and you can disable one and enable the other. So in this context, I might want to see how the project looks without any subgrade adjustments. So I just take those and I turn off it, and it'll recalculate and give me a cut and fill for, okay, calculating up to finish level, and then I'll turn it back on and then subgrade level. Now, if you know what you're expecting to see there, that can be really reassuring to see. So you can test different options out without having to cut and paste, which was problematic in the 2021 version. So I'll just briefly mention the offset UI. If you wanted to offset an element, you used to have to go into an option called define and change it from level to level and offset. We've changed that to have its own dedicated menu now. So there's an offset menu with off Z, X, Y, Z. We just thought that made a lot more sense. And you'll now find these offset options on all absolute elements rather than just the feature surface and the triangle surface had X, Y, Z, whereas now they all have that option. So a little thing, but it makes quite a big difference to editing is a shortcut key for splitting lines. We often receive feedback that that was quite cumbersome, and I'll just demonstrate that quickly. So double click here, and then we're going editing this reduce element. So before, if you wanted to add detail to this, or add a section here, you'd have to kind of find the correct point and then go from this menu, go add after. And now it's a lot easier. Just select the line and you just press Z, and then it splits the line like that. So that's kind of useful, a small thing, but something that really can make a difference. And like, I'll just demonstrate I'm just pressing Control Z now to go back, just to demonstrate that working in the editor. So this is probably where you'll be using Control Z the most, is in the edit option, where you're moving lines, maybe you move them in the wrong place or delete one accidentally. I've already used it quite a lot. So that's the split tool. So another thing you might notice is the adding of these absolute and relative banners above different elements. So we always had this concept of absolute elevations, or elements defined by an absolute elevation, which is like an elevation from mean sea level, and these ones which are adjustments, and they're specified by depth and height, which is from either another element in the case of a subgrade adjustment, or like in the case of a strip, it's from the ground. So what we've done is just reinforce that concept by adding these banners, and we've also enforced the order. We haven't totally fixed the order, but we kind of make it more, we steer you in the direction that we recommend, which is to have the absolute ones first and then the relative ones adjusting either the absolute or ground, rather than you can mix them together and have some quite confusing setups. And often that's only really needed for advanced users. So we kind of, basically when you add absolute element, it will go to the bottom of the list. If you add a relative element, it will now go to the bottom of this list. And if you try and break the order, it will give you a warning. It doesn't stop you doing it, but it gives you a warning saying this is kind of an advanced setup, but maybe you want to stick with unless you really know the program, it's best to stick with our recommended absolute first and then relatives after that. So that really helps with new users in particular. So the final thing we'll go through in this section is, and this is also to do with the subgrade adjustments, is a new visualization, which is element colors. So this menu here, where you can change from cut and fill or shade earthworks level. So these have always existed, like the ability to shade by elevation or shade by cut and fill. We've added a new one, which is shade by element color. And this is really handy. You can change the color of each one. So I could change this to, so this can match your material map, so you can make sure your adjustments match the map that you've got. And they can actually override each other, these ones. And the adjustment that takes precedence will be the one that's lower in the list. So this is a way that you can check that you've got the order right. So if I switch this one around, it should recalculate, and then you'll see that the order is kind of not quite right because the purple is overriding the pink one, and you can immediately see like that's the wrong surface color for that zone. This is also, this kind of thing will also be in the exports as a diagram. So Kate will be talking about the exports a bit later, but that's something to note. So I'll quickly go to the next section that I'll be covering, which is measurements. So the measurements in Kubla Cubed have always been a bit simple. So we had area lengths and counts, but you couldn't group them. So that would be quite a frequent request, which we have fixed, and I'll show that. We've also designed a new system which can report volume regions by depth. So you can say, tell me all the region where cut is 1 foot to 2 foot, for instance. and it can report that region separately and then a remainder to the rest of the project. And there's kind of certain standards that require this. So in the UK, we have RIC standards, SMM7 and RM2 that require this. So we have some default templates for these standards, which you can use. But for US users, if there are any standards that you would like us to integrate into the program, please let us know and we'll kind of add those to our list. It's pretty easy for us to just update the templates with another standard. So that'll be if someone specifies, like, I want the cut and fill, but I want it broken down like from 0 to 1 foot, from 1 foot to 4 foot, from 4 foot to etc. Because it would have a different impact on the estimate depending on how deep you're going, or if there's rock beyond a certain depth in an area, it can be useful for that. So I'll just show you where that is in the user interface. We perhaps don't have time to go through that in too much detail, but so with the areas and lengths, basically just go into 2D so we can see them a bit better. So the areas here have 3 areas in one element. So this is like the building areas, and in this length I have two security fences or 2 lengths measured in one element. So it seems quite a simple thing, but that wasn't possible in the past. And it is really useful if you're measuring a lot of pipe work or fences or doing a load of different areas. Now we've got a special area in the estimation spreadsheet for the areas, lengths and counts. So if you go File, Export to Spreadsheet, is probably the best one to use for these 2D takeoff. You can see this yellow table now has got the building areas, and it's got the 3 and then a sum of all 3 of them, and you've got the 2 lengths and 1 for there. So the areas also work with punch outs. So if I was to punch a hole out of that, it will also calculate correctly the kind of sort of donut shape from there. Okay, so that's the areas. Now also in this panel we have the depths region type thing that I was mentioning. So if you click on volume region, you actually have to just create an arbitrary volume region by boundary first, and then you can change it to, once it calculates, you can change it to a depth range one. So say if I go, I want cut range, and I can specify that I want maybe all the cut between 1 and 2, and it should calculate that for me. It's those regions have cut between 1 foot and 2 foot, and in the cut and fill report, it will report those regions, and it will give you a remainder. So that can be useful in certain scenarios. I'll just show you how to access the templates that I mentioned. If you go batch create, there's the RICS NRM2 standard and the RICS SMM7. Okay, so I think that's everything from me. I'll pass you on to Kate, who's going to discuss, give us more detail on the import and exports, I believe, and also the new CAD import user interface that's been we've been working quite a lot on as well. Okay, over to you, Kate.
Okay, thank you very much, Ted. That's great. So yeah, as Ted said, I will be going through, to start off with, importing your CAD entities and PDF vectors, and looking at how we've improved or made massive improvements to the CAD importer. So we'll look at how you can now add multiple filters rather than just one, how our dashed lines have been rationalized. So we've improved the way that the importer detects dashed lines. And then also we've made a change from tick boxes to sliders when doing filling in line gaps and removing lines. And then also some additional exports that you can do in the CAD importer without actually importing the data itself. Okay, so I'll just open up Kubla now so that we can see that in action. Okay, so we've got this project. You can see that you may be familiar with this because we did a webinar on the housing projects. So if we add a feature surface, you have your options at the top that we can import. We can either trace manually as we've done in the past, or you can add from the importer. So let's just tick our contours. Okay, and the add from file is where we then open up the importer window. And you'll be familiar with the setup of having the original site plan on the left, and then the extracted data will show on the right once we've added our filters. So we, as I mentioned, we have improved the dashed line detection. So if we add a new filter and make a selection, so we just want to import these lines, so these are our minor contours. We can see that this imports the lines. It's identified them as dashed and then turned them into these solid contour lines. So that's a massive improvement. We've been doing a lot of testing on kind of example files to just see how that has been improved and to get that improvement. So the detection it's just a bit more efficient. So it identifies more lines rather than before it may not have identified them. Okay, and then we're going to add a second filter for the major contours, and that will bring those in as well. And you can see that we've got these options here, so you can perhaps you've done a selection that includes multiple lines, and then you can turn on and off your layers. This one's just got the one major contours layer, but so we don't need to turn those off. Well, we could do, but then that just removes all the ones that we've just asked it to import. So that is pretty straightforward and kind of familiar, similar to what we had in the past. There's just some additional options there. And then moving on to these other areas, we've got this added option here of setting our contours. So if you have, this is very useful if you import from PDF vectors, because your vectors will import at 0, but also CAD files can have elevation set to 0 or to -999. So if you want those contours or points to import at a not set value, so you can add the value later on or leave it as not set, then you can just add in the value here. And it just makes it a lot easier to then edit in future, rather than like in the past we've had to kind of select each contour and delete the value of 0 or -999 or whatever it was, and then add in a value. Anything that is imported as not set will it doesn't need to be set, so it will be ignored by the program when you then try and triangulate. So you could have a whole set of contours and maybe add 50% of the values, and then it will triangulate those 50% that you've set, and then the other 50% it will be ignored. So it just improves that efficiency in your workflow. In addition, it's quite useful for break lines. We've had kind of when you're importing break lines, each point would have a value of 0. Now it will be not set, and so then you can just add a couple of the values that you know along the break line, and then it will interpolate the ones that are not set. Just again, speeding up that process, not having to go in and delete every single point within a break line. So yeah, that's just been something that users have kind of requested or have kind of not been very happy about when they've been importing break lines. It's actually in the past been faster to just trace it manually rather than import the break lines. Okay, so that's a massive improvement on the workflow of importing contours and break lines and points as well into your projects. Perhaps you have a project maybe similar to this, that you've got a lot of contours, but they aren't involved in the disturbance area. So we can now add a crop. So rather than importing excess data, you can just create an area or region that you want to import those contours for. So we can do this by tracing a region, like so. And then only those contours within that region will import. You can remove or you can add areas. So you can add another, maybe if you want these ones up here, and that will import just that region there as well. And we can we also have the option to then remove. So perhaps you've selected this area, but you don't want this section. You can then exclude that as well. So that's just some options with the crop. If I just clear that and then add so if you've already imported or traced an outline, then you'll also have the option to crop to that ground line. So that can also then speed up your cropping. So perhaps you've got the outline for the disturbance area and you have contours within that. You could have traced that outline and then just import within that area. Okay, and then lastly, we have these sliders. So these used to be tick boxes, and we've just made that into a more, it just makes it more, so you've got more option to remove those short lines. So you'll see as we move the slider along, you'll see that the shortest line will remove. Ooh, if you click it. Start that again. So as you move it along, each line gradually will remove, just leaving behind the longest line. So that might be useful if you have a lot of pollution that is within a layer that shouldn't be there. Perhaps the text has been included or the grid lines have been included in your contours and you don't need that, then that just removes those short lines really quickly. Okay, and then the last thing to mention in the importer is that we can now export data that we can see in the importer to CAD and XML. So with the original site plan, this is really useful if you have a PDF that you've scaled within Kubla Cubed, and then you want to export that data as a CAD file so that you can make any changes to it. So that's just one use case for exporting from the original site plan. You can also hide any layers that you don't want. So perhaps you can turn those off and then export with your edited project. So perhaps you want to take away any text or there's been changes and you don't need those entities in your project. Okay, and then the exporting from the extracted, you can again export to a CAD file, or you can export the points to a CSV. So this is useful if you're using machine control, you can export to CSV straight away. And so yeah, these are just additional things that you may not use, but are there if you need them. Okay, so moving on to exports. So if you are familiar with Kubla Cubed, you'll know that we have 3 types of export. We have the reports, the spreadsheets, and the drawings. So these have been updated for 2024 to add coloured tables to the spreadsheets and reports, which just makes it easier to identify the data within your spreadsheets. And then we also have the breakdown of volume elements by, we have the breakdown by element. So instead of just the total volume, it's broken down into elements in your drawings. And also with site plans, they can now be seen in the CAD and drawing exports, meaning that you've got all the information in one place. So I'll just show you some examples. So rather than downloading live, I've got some reports ready. So here's our drawing. You can see that, if I just make that full screen, you can see that we've got the existing, and here's the site plan on top. So as I said, it just means that everything's in one place. And then we've got the site plan with the disturbance area. And then here we have down the bottom, you can zoom in slightly. We can see that we have the data. It's a bit small on this view, but you can zoom in and you'll be able to see that we've got the cut, the fill, and the cut and fill for that disturbance area. And the same with the other pages that we have here. So that just shows your lengths with the total here. And then, as Ted mentioned, with the color elements, you can now export that view so that each element has its own kind of color and hatching, and you can then view them. It just makes it more obvious in your drawing to see where each of those elements are. And then we've got the breakdown at the side. So for the gardens, cut, fill, cut and fill, and going down for each of those elements. So that nice breakdown just makes it easier for you as the creator of the project, but also if you're sharing that with your stakeholders, they'll be able to see straight away which element has got which, how much cut and fill, and can do their calculations from that. Okay, and then just to show you in the spreadsheet as well. So to just look at this briefly, but again, we can see that we've got kind of the range of levels and then the volumes broken down by element here, and then the cut, the fill, and if we slide it across, the cut and fill, and the cut for red, red for cut, blue for fill, and then the purple shows the cut and fill. And any measurements that you have will be showing in yellow, and the volumes by region. So if you have an SMM7 set of regions defined, then you can see those as breakdown in this spreadsheet as well. Okay, so I hope that kind of gives you a nice idea of all the updates that we've made to Kubla Cubed that we're really proud of. We appreciate that it's taken a bit longer than we had first hoped, but we wanted to get it right. We've kind of made additional updates that perhaps we were previously not going to do, but overall it's a really great product that we're really happy is going to be released very soon. So now we are going to move on to the Q&A. So I'm going to pass over to Ted to host that Q&A, and if you have any questions, then do add them. I can see that we've just we've got a few come through, so we'll answer those now, but do keep adding your questions as we're answering. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you in a moment.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Yeah, so we'll go through some questions now. I was having problems with my headphones, so I thought I'd switch to low tech ones, but they have their own issue. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so we do have a question about some of the future features. So balancing, we don't have a site balancing tool in the program. In regard to utilities, they are beyond the length and the trenching tools in Kubla Cubed. You can do the trenches in Kubla Cubed volumes, but Kubla Cubed is very focused on volumes at the moment, like in terms of pipes and things like that. We haven't got that in the program, but Kate, maybe you want to talk a bit about the survey that we're going to be doing in terms of future features.
Of course. So we love to hear what our customers think of the software, and if there's any features that you require that are currently not in the software, then we want to hear about that. Or if you have experienced any kind of issues with it, then do get in touch. We will be sending out a survey, as Ted mentioned, after the release, kind of within a month. So you've got a bit of a time to play around with the new features and get used to using the software, so that we can hear what you think of it, and if there's anything that that you would like in future, and then we can add that to our development kind of plan, and prioritize if there is something that a lot of people are asking for, then we can prioritize those features or enhancements. But yeah, if you don't receive that communication, then do get in touch with anything that you feel would be of benefit to you and other people that are using the software as well.
I'll go through the first one, which is from Damien, which is, will this webinar be available for viewing later? Yes, it will. We'll cut the 3 webinars we've done, we'll cut them together and push it on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed already to YouTube, our YouTube channel, it's a good idea because you get this, and we'll also be, some of the things we've covered, we'll be doing more detailed videos such as the CAD import there. Kate just demonstrated, we'll do a video specifically on that, maybe PDF vector extraction as well, it's a separate video, because it's very complex. And like today, we've just given an overview. We've only just been able to give an overview in the time. So I hope that answers your question, Damien. Another question for maybe Kate from Jeremy is, can drawings be stitched together? Oh, actually for Rich, sorry, can drawings be stitched together? The site plans.
So the answer, yeah, I mean, so the answer to that is yes, they can. But this is also a feature of Cubed 2021. If I share my screen, we go on to Cube 2021, and this is freely available. So whether you're a customer or not, you can access all of these, and it shows you includes within these stitching and various through our various tools, ability to rotate plans, to move them, to align them against 2 points, cropping and scaling, and so on. So the only thing I would say that it's really important if you're a new user using the software, make sure that you do your site plan setup first before you add any data, because once you started adding data, you can't then rescale everything. So you need to get the site plan sorted out first.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Maybe a question for Kate. It's about the perpetual upgrade and the process for that. I think we're sending emails, but Kate, if you describe.
Yeah, so we'll send a communication to our perpetual users, and you may qualify for a discount if you have purchased within kind of a close range. That hasn't been confirmed as yet of what. So, for example, when we did it in the past, if you had bought within a month, then you would have had a quite a high discount, just because we appreciate that you haven't had your kind of full money's worth, and that there has been an update, and perhaps you weren't aware that the update was coming. So yes, there will be a communication sent to perpetual users. If you think you've not received anything, then do get in touch, and we can arrange that for you. And it will just reflect, the discount will reflect on how long you have owned that perpetual for. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
24. There's a last question, I'll try and answer, I think, about can the contours still be simplified? Yes, actually, maybe on the CAD import, you'll notice there's a simplify button. So before it's like they were only simplified beyond a certain range, but now they can be simplified even at low ranges by using the simplify button. So that's an enhancement. Also, in extreme examples, like where we sometimes have contour sets with a lot of points, there's a couple of other options. We can crop, like what Kate demonstrated, and we can also crop to a smaller area that's useful, but we can also export the points and import them back as points, which can then do a point reduction. That's another way of getting, if you've got a very large amount of contour data, which is just the program struggling with, that can be useful. So there's a couple of different workflows which can reduce the data down. On top of that, we're going to be, after this one is released, we've been working a lot on features and usability, but one of the focuses in the minor updates is going to be performance. So that's somewhere we're going to be putting a lot of time going forward. And I think that's all the questions. So let me see.
If I could just add as well, we have made a lot of other improvements beyond what we've just sort of given a snapshot of here. These are the sort of the major changes, but behind the scenes, you will find a few other little bits and pieces. And these, as Kate and Ted have alluded to, we will actually document in the manual and also in future mini sort of videos and stuff. So yeah, there's quite a lot in there.
Yeah, there's also some videos that have already been created, so they'll be coming out soon on the YouTube channel as well. So it'd be worth you, if you've not already, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and then you'll see those being made live, and they'll also be put on the website as well. So we'll have a new section on the videos website with the 2024 videos, because we appreciate there are quite a lot of changes. So we want to try and get as much information available to you as possible so that you can familiarize yourself as quickly as possible using the videos that we've created and the user manual, as Rich has just mentioned.
Okay, I think that's it. So thanks everyone for coming. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback and yeah, on the program, and we're hoping it saves you a lot of time in your work and you can really produce good estimates with like brilliant visualizations with the new tools. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.